The stars had never been kind to humanity. 300 years ago, when the first alien ships appeared in Earth's sky, humans had believed their dreams were coming true. They thought they would find friends among the stars. They thought wrong. Captain Park stood on the bridge of his ship, the Endurance, and watched the alien inspection team tear through his cargo hold. This was the fourth inspection this month. They never found anything illegal because there was nothing illegal to find. But the Concordat did not care about truth. They cared about keeping humans afraid. "Captain, they broke open 3 more containers," his second-in-command reported. Lieutenant was a small woman with sharp eyes and a memory that forgot nothing. She kept records of every insult, every broken container, every credit stolen through fake fees. The crew called her files the ledger. Kept his face calm. He had learned long ago that showing anger only made things worse. "How much will they charge us this time?" "Standard inspection fee, plus damage assessment, plus processing tax." His voice was flat. "About 40,000 credits." 40,000 credits. That was 3 months of profit, gone in an afternoon. The alien inspectors, tall creatures with gray skin and too many eyes, did not even pretend to look sorry. To them, humans were just animals that had somehow learned to build ships, dangerous animals from a dangerous world. Earth had been classified as a Category 9 the moment the Concordat discovered it. The gravity was too strong. The weather was too violent. The animals were too deadly. And the humans were the worst of all. They came from a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They had evolved to survive through pure stubbornness and violence. The Concordat had decided early that such creatures could not be trusted. So they made rules. Humans could not own weapons above a certain size. Human ships could not have proper engines. Human colonies could only exist in the worst systems on the worst planets. And humans could never, ever vote in the Galactic Assembly. For 300 years, humanity had followed these rules. They smiled when aliens called them gravity apes. They paid unfair taxes without complaint. They watched other species grow rich while human colonies struggled to survive. They did all this because their leaders believed that patience would win respect. Those leaders were wrong. On Earth, in the Great Hall of the United Terran Council, Chair read the latest message from the Concordat. Her hands did not shake, but only because she had trained herself for moments like this. 60 years of politics had taught her to hide her feelings, but today, hiding was almost impossible. "They want to relocate 3 colonies," she said to the emergency meeting. Her voice was quiet but clear. New, and station. 2 million people given 60 days to leave their homes. The room erupted in angry voices. Council members shouted questions and demands, but raised her hand and silence fell. "The Concordat says they need the space for a new trade route. They say they will provide ships for evacuation. They say this is for the greater good of galactic commerce." She paused. "They say we should be grateful they are giving us any notice at all." Specialist Minu, her young aide, stepped forward with a tablet. "Chair, the colonies are requesting military protection, but according to Concordat law, any armed resistance would justify full military response. They could destroy the colonies entirely and call it self-defense." "Of course they could," said. "That is how the game has always been played. They make rules that only hurt us, then punish us for breaking them." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of New Seoul stretched to the horizon. 50 million people lived here, building lives under a government that pretended to be free but answered to alien masters. How many of them knew the truth? How many understood that humanity had never really been accepted into galactic society? "I have spent 40 years trying to make peace work," said softly. 40 years of compromise and patience and believing that tomorrow would be better. She turned to face the council. "I was a fool." Minu looked nervous. "Chair, what are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting nothing. I am stating a fact." Her eyes were hard now, harder than anyone had ever seen them. We have tried patience. We have tried diplomacy. We have tried being the good who follow every rule. And where has it brought us? To this room, discussing how to abandon 2 million of our people because aliens want a shorter trade route. She walked back to the table and pressed a button. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared. It showed schematics that most of the council had never seen before: ships, weapons, installations hidden in places the Concordat had never thought to look. For 150 years, explained, humanity has been preparing for this day. We hoped it would never come. We prayed that patience would eventually earn us real respect. But we are not stupid. We knew that hope was never a strategy. The council members stared at the display in shock. Hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, secret colonies in systems marked as uninhabitable, weapons that were supposed to be impossible for human technology. All of it built in silence, maintained in secret, waiting for the day when patience finally ran out. Convene the Emergency Defense Committee, ordered. All members, including the hidden ones, and activate the deep archive protocols. Minu's face went pale. The deep archive was a legend, a rumor that even most council members did not believe, but looking at his face, he understood that the legends were true. What about the diplomatic channels? Someone asked. Should we not try one more time to negotiate? Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We will negotiate. We will file complaints and request meetings and do everything expected of us. The Concordat must believe nothing has changed. They must believe we are still the patient, harmless who do as they are told. She looked around the room, meeting every eye. But while we smile and bow, our ships will wake, our soldiers will prepare, and when the Concordat comes to take our worlds, they will learn a lesson that the galaxy will never forget. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. They will learn what happens when you push patient creatures past their limit. They will learn why R is called a, and they will learn it the hard way. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was done being patient. The galaxy noticed nothing. This was exactly what humanity wanted. For 3 weeks after the council's decision, everything looked normal. Human ambassadors attended meetings and smiled at insults. Human merchants paid their unfair taxes without complaint. Human colonies on New and Station began packing their belongings as ordered. The Concordat watched all of this and felt satisfied. They were behaving. They had no idea what was happening in the dark. Deep in an asteroid field that Concordat maps showed as empty, Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of a ship that was not supposed to exist. The Indomitable was officially registered as a civilian research vessel. In truth, it was the most powerful warship humanity had ever built, and it had been under construction for 60 years. All systems are online, Commander No reported from his station. The fleet is ready. The fleet looked at her tactical display and felt her heart swell with pride. 47 ships surrounded the Indomitable, each one a secret that humanity had kept for decades. They had names like Defiance and Persistence and Never Again. They were crewed by officers who had trained their whole lives for a battle they hoped would never come. Activate the Veil Network, ordered. The Veil Network was humanity's greatest technological secret. It was a system of satellites and signal generators scattered across human space, designed to do one simple thing: lie. It fed false information to Concordat sensors, showing them exactly what they expected to see: empty space where ships hid, weak colonies where weapons waited, harmless humans doing harmless things. The Concordat believed humans were technologically inferior. They believed this because humans had spent 300 years making sure they believed it. On New, the largest of the threatened colonies, Sergeant Major Lee briefed her soldiers in an underground bunker that had been built before the colony itself. 5,000 troops sat in perfect rows, their faces calm and ready. They called themselves the, after ancient warriors from Korean history. When the Concordat enforcement fleet arrives, explained, they expect to find crying civilians, maybe some protesters throwing rocks. They will find us instead. One of her lieutenants raised a hand. What are our rules of engagement, Sergeant Major? We do not fire first. We let them land their troops and begin their evacuation. We let them believe they have won, smiled grimly. And then, when Admiral Shin gives the signal, we show them what can really do. The soldiers did not cheer. They did not need to. They had been preparing for this moment since they were children, training in secret while pretending to be farmers and miners and factory workers. Every knew the history, every insult, every broken treaty, every human who had died because the galaxy decided their lives did not matter. They were not fighting for revenge. They were fighting for the right to exist without asking permission. Back on Earth, Council Chair met with the one person who understood humanity's secret weapons better than anyone. Doctor was 127 years old, kept alive by medical technology that the Concordat had banned for humans. He had been designing weapons since before first contact, and his greatest creations had never been used. "Are you certain the systems will work?" asked him. Laughed softly. It was the laugh of a very old man who had waited a very long time for this question. "Chair, I have tested these weapons 1,000 times in simulations. I have built prototypes in secret facilities across human space. I have prepared for this day since I was 30 years old." He pulled up a holographic display. Weapon systems filled the air, missiles that moved faster than anything the Concordat had, shields that worked on principles alien scientists did not understand, engines that let human ships dance through space like nothing else in the galaxy. "The Concordat thinks we are stupid," said. "They gave us their old technology and expected us to use it forever. They did not understand that humans look at a tool and immediately ask, 'How can I make this better?'" "How long have we had parity with them?" asked. 100 years. His old eyes sparkled with something between anger and joy. "We have had superiority for 50. We simply chose not to show it." Closed her eyes. 100 years of being treated as lesser beings when humanity could have fought back. 100 years of patience while their people suffered. Why did we wait so long? Because fighting was never the goal. We wanted peace. We wanted acceptance. We wanted to prove that could be civilized. His voice grew heavy with old sorrow. But the Concordat was never going to accept us. They fear us too much, and now they have given us no choice. In the secret command center beneath New Sol, final preparations were. Intelligence Director hand-coordinated with hidden agents across the galaxy, making sure that when humanity struck, they would strike everywhere at once. Communications Officer Go tested encrypted channels that the Concordat had never detected. Fleet Coordinator Bay tracked the position of every human ship, military and civilian alike. "The enforcement fleet will arrive at New in 72 hours, reported. 300 ships under High Commander of the Dominion. His voice was cold. There were insect-like creatures who had conquered 17 species. They were the Concordat's enforcers, the ones who did the dirty work that other species preferred not to think about. They will expect this to be easy." "Yes," agreed. "They have never fought before, not really." On the Indomitable, Admiral gathered her senior officers for one final briefing. Captain Park was there, transferred from his merchant vessel to command a destroyer. Lieutenant stood beside him, her ledger finally about to serve its true purpose. "In 3 days," told them, "we will show the galaxy what humanity can do. We will be outnumbered. We will be facing enemies who think we are weak, and we will win." "How can you be so certain?" one young officer asked. Looked at the officer with something like pity. "Because they have built their fleets to fight each other. They have designed their ships for creatures that cannot survive high gravity, that need perfect temperatures, that break under stress. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. Our ships are built for us, for bodies that can take punishment their species cannot imagine." She turned to face the viewport. where the hidden fleet waited in darkness. They think means dangerous, they are right, but they do not understand what it really means. Her voice was soft but carried across the bridge. It means we survived everything our world threw at us. It means we are hard to kill. And it means that when we finally decide to fight, we fight with everything we have. The countdown began. 72 hours until the galaxy changed forever. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Nu with the confidence of predators arriving at a feast. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons that had conquered a dozen worlds. High Commander sat in his command throne and felt nothing but boredom. This was not a battle. This was pest control. "Scan the planet," he ordered, his voice clicking in the way of his insect-like species. "Show me how many humans we need to remove." His sensor officer bent over her console. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she made a sound that had never heard from one of his crew before. It was the sound of confusion turning to fear. "Commander, there are anomalies. The cities appear empty, but I am detecting strange energy readings beneath the surface. And there are ships that were not on any of our scans." Leaned forward. "What kind of ships?" The answer came not from his officer, but from the void itself. The first wave of kinetic rounds struck the fleet before anyone could react. They were simple weapons, just chunks of metal accelerated to a fraction of, but they were weapons the Concordat had never thought to defend against. Why would they? Energy shields stopped energy weapons. Everyone used energy weapons. That was how civilized species fought. But humans had never been civilized. 20 ships died in the first 3 seconds. They did not explode in the dramatic way of ships hit by plasma or lasers. They simply crumpled, their hulls folding inward like paper crushed by an invisible hand. The kinetic rounds punched through shields that had never been designed to stop them and kept going through the ships behind. "Return fire," screamed, his calm finally breaking. "All ships target those batteries." The fleet turned its weapons toward the planet's surface. Plasma cannons charged. Missile bays opened. For a moment, it seemed like Nu would burn. Then the second wave arrived. Admiral Shin's voice cut through every communication channel in the system, human and alien alike. "This is Admiral Shin of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of human sovereign space. You have 60 seconds to surrender." The first Terran fleet appeared from nowhere. One moment there was empty space. The next moment there were 48 warships in perfect formation, their weapons already locked on targets. The Veil network dropped its illusions, and the Concordat finally saw what humanity had been hiding. Stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "That is impossible. They cannot have ships like that. Our intelligence says." "Your intelligence was wrong." The human admiral's voice was calm, almost gentle. 50 seconds. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander No tracked enemy positions while Captain Park coordinated with the surface batteries. Lieutenant stood at the communications station, recording everything. This moment would go into the ledger, not as another insult to be endured, but as the day humanity stopped enduring. "They are not surrendering," reported. "The flagship is charging weapons." "Of course they are not surrendering," replied. "They do not believe we can win. They have never lost to a younger species." She sat back in her command chair. Time to teach them something new. All ships engage. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Concordat had always fought with overwhelming force against weaker enemies. Their tactics were simple: surround, bombard, accept surrender or destruction. They had never faced an enemy that could match them ship for ship. They had certainly never faced an enemy that could outfly them. Human ships moved through the formation like water through stones. They rolled and dove and twisted in ways that should have been impossible. Inside those ships, human crews experienced forces that would have killed any Concordat species. But humans were. Their bodies had evolved under crushing gravity. Their hearts pumped blood through turns that would have burst alien vessels. Their brains stayed conscious through accelerations that would have knocked any into blackness. "Target their engines," commanded. "I want prisoners, not corpses." The Terran ships obeyed with terrifying precision. Concordat vessels found their engines destroyed before they could flee, their weapons disabled before they could fire. Ship after ship went dark, drifting helplessly while human weapons searched for the next target. On the surface, Sergeant Major Lee watched the battle through her tactical display while her troops secured the ground forces. The aliens had landed 10,000 soldiers expecting to oversee a peaceful evacuation. They had found themselves surrounded by warriors who had been waiting decades for this moment. "Tell your fleet to surrender," told the captured ground commander. "Your ships are dying up there. More will die if you keep fighting." The commander, a tall, thin creature whose body was covered in hard plates, stared at her with compound eyes that could not understand what they were seeing. You are supposed to be primitives, weak, frightened." "We were never weak," replied. "We were patient. There is a difference." In orbit, High Commander watched his fleet crumble around him. 200 ships gone. His flagship was surrounded by 3 human destroyers that could have destroyed him 10 times over but had not. The human admiral had been precise about that. She wanted prisoners, not corpses. "This is your final chance," his voice said over his communications system. "Surrender now and your crews will live. Continue fighting and I will be forced to finish this." Looked at his bridge crew. They were his most loyal officers, beings who had followed him through a dozen conquests. They stared back at him with eyes full of fear. Not fear of dying, did not fear death. Fear of something far worse. Fear of the humans. "All ships," said slowly, as if each word cost him something precious, "stand down. Cease fire and await further orders." The Battle of Nu ended 4 hours after it began. 240 Concordat ships were destroyed or disabled. 40 ships surrendered intact. The Terran Defense Force lost 3 vessels, all crews rescued by their sister ships. On the Indomitable, Admiral allowed herself one small smile. "Send word to Earth. Tell them it is done." Across the galaxy, in hidden bases and secret colonies and ships that had waited generations for this signal, humans received the news. The first battle was won. The war for humanity's future had just begun. And in the halls of the Galactic Assembly, where aliens had mocked humans for 300 years, the word spread like fire. The had woken up. The had stopped pretending, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The Galactic Assembly had not known true fear in 1,000 years. Today, fear filled the Great Hall like a living thing. Representatives from 200 species sat in their assigned places, their bodies showing distress in 100 different ways. The delegates had their plates drawn tight against their bodies, a sign of extreme anxiety in their species. The verdant communion, tall plant-like beings who usually swayed gently in any breeze, stood completely still. Even the crystalline hegemony, whose silicon-based bodies rarely showed emotion, had dimmed their inner lights to almost nothing. They were all staring at the same thing, the human ambassador walking calmly to the speaking platform. Ambassador O was an old man who had spent his entire life in diplomatic service. He had smiled through insults that would have broken lesser people. He had negotiated treaties that everyone knew were unfair. He had represented humanity with dignity and patience while the galaxy treated his species like dangerous animals. Today, for the first time in his career, he was not smiling. "For 300 years," he began, his voice filling the silent hall, "humanity has asked for nothing but fair treatment. We followed your rules. We accepted your restrictions. We paid your taxes and tolerated your inspections and lived in the worst corners of the galaxy because you told us that was where we belonged." No one interrupted him. No one dared. "We smiled when you called us monsters. We worked twice as hard as any other species to prove we could be trusted. We watched our children grow up believing they were lesser beings because the Concordat said they were." Paused, letting his words sink in. And we did all of this because we believed that patience would eventually earn us respect. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of species that had mocked him, cheated him, treated him like dirt for decades. We were wrong. The representative tried to speak. Ambassador, what happened at Nu was an unprovoked act of aggression. The Concordat has every right to. The Concordat, interrupted softly, sent 300 warships to remove 2 million humans from their homes because you wanted a shorter trade route. You gave them 60 days to leave everything they had built. You did not ask. You did not negotiate. You simply assumed we would obey because we always had. He pressed a button on the podium. A holographic display appeared above the assembly, showing maps and numbers that made several species gasp. Your records say humanity has 31 colony worlds. We have 97. Your records say we have 40 merchant vessels. We have 400 warships. Your records say our population is 2 billion. We number 18 billion. Let the numbers hang in the air. We have been lying to you for 150 years. We apologize for the deception, but we hope you understand why it was necessary. On Earth, Council Chair watched the speech through a secure feed. Around her, the Emergency Defense Committee monitored responses from across the galaxy. Intelligence Director hand pulled up report after report, her eyes widening with each new piece of information. The Dominion is in chaos, reported. They lost 40% of their military capability in a single engagement. Their government is facing internal challenges from species they previously conquered. What about the other powers? Asked. The crystalline hegemony has declared neutrality. They are waiting to see what happens next. Pulled up another report. But the interesting news is from the smaller species, the ones the Concordat has been treating almost as badly as they treated us. Leaned forward, tell me. 17 species have sent secret communications requesting diplomatic contact. The Verdant Communion has acknowledged that they have been trading with our hidden colonies for 50 years and wish to continue. The floating minds want to discuss mutual defense. Even some of the subject species are asking if humanity might help them. Sat back in her chair. For 300 years, humanity had been alone in the galaxy, hated, feared, isolated. Now, suddenly, they had potential allies, other species who had suffered under Concordat rule, other species who saw in humanity's victory a chance for their own freedom. We need to be careful, she said slowly. We did not fight for empire, we fought for survival. Of course, agreed, but survival might require friends. In the assembly hall, Ambassador was finishing his speech. Humanity does not want war. We never wanted war. We wanted to live in peace, to trade fairly, to raise our children without fear. The Concordat made that impossible. He turned to face the delegation directly. You thought we were weak because we did not fight back. You thought our patience was cowardice. You were wrong. Our patience was strategy. We waited until we were strong enough to win, and then we waited longer, hoping we would never have to use that strength. His voice dropped, becoming almost gentle. You forced our hand. You threatened our homes, our families, our right to exist. And now you have learned the truth about, we do not give up. We do not surrender. We survive no matter what it costs, no matter how long it takes. He straightened and his voice filled the hall once more. The Concordat as it exists today cannot continue. Humanity will no longer accept rules designed to keep us weak. We will no longer pay taxes meant to strangle our economy. We will no longer smile while you call us monsters. He paused. But we are not here to destroy. We are here to rebuild. The holographic display changed, showing a new structure, a reformed assembly where every species had equal voice, where we're not punished for their biology, where strength was not an excuse for oppression. This is our proposal, said. A new Concordat built on actual equality. We do not demand leadership. We do not seek revenge. We only want what we have always wanted, the right to exist as equals in a galaxy that has room for all of us. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then slowly, the representative of the verdant communion rose to her full height. Her species rarely spoke in assembly, preferring to observe. But today, her voice rang out clear and strong. The verdant communion supports this proposal. Humanity has shown restraint in victory. They have earned the right to be heard. Another representative stood, a small, furred being from a species that had been oppressed by for centuries. The people of Autumn also support this proposal. One by one, other species rose. Not all of them, the remained seated, their plates drawn tight with humiliation and rage, but enough, more than enough. Watched them stand and felt something he had not felt in decades. Hope. Real hope, not the desperate kind he had clung to through years of failure, but hope backed by strength and will, and the knowledge that humanity would never again beg for the right to exist. The vote will be held in one standard week, the Assembly's automated systems announced. All species are encouraged to consider the proposal carefully. As left the platform, he found himself surrounded by delegates from a dozen species, all asking questions, all wanting to talk, allies. After 300 years of isolation, humanity finally had allies. The galaxy was changing, and this time humanity would help shape what it became. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Nu. The galaxy that existed now would have been unrecognizable to anyone who had lived before that day. Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched her fleet move through space. But it was no longer just her fleet. The Joint Defense Force included ships from 23 species, all flying together under a unified command. Human destroyers flew alongside verdant cruisers. Autumn fighters escorted carriers. Even a few vessels had joined, crewed by those who had chosen peace over the fatting glory of their dying dominion. "Admiral, we are approaching the coordinates," Commander No reported. "Long-range sensors are picking up the anomaly." Nodded. This was their mission now, not conquering, not defending, but exploring. The galaxy had threats beyond its borders, things that the Concordat had always been too divided to face. Now, united by something more than fear, the species of known space were finally ready to look outward. "Take us in slowly," ordered. "We do not know what we are dealing with yet." On the colony world of Nu, Governor watched workers put the final touches on a memorial. The structure was simple, a tall pillar of black stone surrounded by smaller markers, one for each human who had died during the centuries of oppression. Not soldiers. Most of them had not been soldiers. They were merchants who had been cheated into poverty, colonists who had starved when Concordat tariffs made food too expensive, children who had grown up believing they were worthless because that was what the galaxy told them. "It looks good," said a voice beside her. Captain had come down from orbit for the dedication ceremony. Her ship, the Persistence, was part of the defense fleet that now protected human space, not against alien invasion, but as part of the joint defense force that protected everyone. "I spent months trying to decide what to write on it," admitted. "How do you summarize 300 years of suffering?" Thought about her ledger, the database she had kept for so long. Every insult, every injustice, every broken promise. She had finally closed it after Nu, but she had not deleted it. The records would remain, a reminder of what had been. "You do not summarize it," said finally. "You just make sure it never happens again." The dedication ceremony drew thousands of people, humans from Nu and visitors from across human space. But there were other species too, verdant observers, autumn diplomats, even a small delegation of who had come to pay their respects. The galaxy was changing in ways no one could have predicted. Council Chair addressed the crowd through a holographic link from Earth. She had aged visibly in the past year. The stress of managing humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage had taken its toll, but her eyes were clear and her voice was strong. "Today we remember those who did not live to see this day," she said. "We remember the generations who suffered in silence, who kept their patience when patience was all they had, who held on to hope when hope seemed foolish. They gave us time. They gave us the chance to grow strong. And now we honor their sacrifice by building something better. She paused, looking out at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens. We could have fought earlier. Perhaps we should have. But our ancestors chose a different path. They chose to wait, to prepare, to become more than just survivors. They knew that winning a war was not enough. They wanted us to be ready to win the peace that came after. On the Indomitable, Admiral listened to the speech while her ship approached the anomaly at the edge of known space. The sensor data was strange, energy patterns unlike anything in Concordat records. Something new, something unknown. Admiral said quietly, "Whatever this is, it is big, bigger than anything we have encountered before." "Good," replied. She felt something she had not felt in years, not the grim determination of battle, but the excitement of genuine discovery. "It is about time we found something actually challenging." Back at the memorial, the ceremony was reaching its conclusion. Governor stepped forward to unveil the inscription on the central pillar. The words were simple, chosen after months of debate, meant to capture something that could not really be captured. The inscription read, "They waited in darkness so we could step into light. We remember." Captain Park stood in the crowd, no longer a merchant captain but a fleet commander. Beside him was his old crew from the Endurance, the people who had endured so many inspections and insults with him. Ensign, now lieutenant commander, had tears in his eyes that he did not bother to hide. "Was it worth it?" asked quietly, "all those years of waiting?" Thought about the question. He thought about his father, who had spent his life as a second-class citizen in a galaxy that despised him. He thought about his grandmother, who had told him stories of Earth before contact, when humans had dreamed of finding friends among the stars. He thought about all the years of smiling through pain, of pretending not to notice when aliens treated him like dirt. "It was not worth it," he said finally. "Nothing could be worth what we went through, but it was necessary, and that is different." In the year since new, humanity had changed. They walked taller now, spoke louder, took up space they had always been, but they had not become conquerors. The reformed Concordat, now called the Galactic Union, operated on principles of genuine equality. Every species had a voice. Every world had rights. The old rules designed to oppress had been erased. It was not perfect. The Dominion still resented their fall from power. Some species still feared humans, still whispered about monsters from a death world. Old prejudices did not die easily, but progress was being made, slowly and painfully and genuinely. Doctor did not attend the memorial ceremony. At 128 years old, his health was finally failing, but he watched through a screen in his hospital room and smiled. His weapons had won the battle, but weapons alone could not win peace. That took something else. The same patience that had kept humanity waiting for centuries now turned toward building instead of enduring. "We did it," he murmured to no one in particular. "We actually did it." On the Indomitable, Admiral made a decision. The anomaly before them was clearly artificial, a structure of impossible size, built by something far beyond current galactic technology. It was also very, very old. "Send a message back to Joint Command," she ordered. "Tell them we have found something, something that changes everything." She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes bright with the fire of discovery. "And tell them they are going to investigate." The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. It had learned to respect humanity. Now, perhaps, it was time for the galaxy to follow humanity, not into war, but into the unknown. Into the darkness between stars where ancient secrets waited, into a future that no species could face alone. They had run out of patience for oppression, but they had infinite patience for something else, the long, slow work of building a better universe. And they were just getting started.